Our guest is none other than top tier, the legendary Miss Tina Lawson. As if she needs an introduction, she birthed Beyonce and Solange. Let's get into it.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about talking to you.
Your daughters are phenomenal, and they have such a poise and grace to them that you can't help but to see in you. What did you do to foster those characteristics in them?
I think one of the main things is just to teach them from a very early age that their only competition in life is themselves, and to just always be grateful and to be graceful and to have gratitude and humility. They started very early performing. It wasn't my first choice for them to be performers, to be honest with you. But, once I saw the passion and how talented they were, I tried to encourage them in everything they did. But I always taught them to have a sense of humility and gratitude because, nothing is promised to you. And I just felt like it was such a blessing that God gave them, and just to make them appreciate that.
Absolutely. Now, you say it wasn't your first choice for them to be inside of the business. If they weren't who they are today, what would you have saw as a mom? We always have these aspirations for our children. So what would you have saw Beyonce be and Solange to be?
I wouldn't have cared what it was. I mean, if they wanted to be a nurse or a doctor or, a hairstylist like their mom, it really didn't matter to me. And when I say it wasn't my first choice, it's just because of all of the normal things. I mean, you're a mother, all the things that they're exposed to in the music business, and that, sometimes people make it, the odds of you making it are like 1 to million.
You were a part of a group.
It was called the Veltones. And it was me and 2 other girls. And, we were really quite good. We were good, and we wore the best outfits because me and my mom made all of the costumes. And so we were as much known for our costumes as our singing. But, I was from a really tiny town in Galveston, Texas. And it was like, there were no role models of people that made it in show business. That was so far removed from us that I never really thought that would go anywhere. And it didn't, but I would never have thought that all the things that I learned, like making costumes and practicing and rehearsing and, trying to have a cute little walk or whatever, would come in handy for me as a tool to work with the girls. And so, you just never know.
Yeah. And when you say that, like, that was one of the things that they were known for, were their amazing outfits. And for you to brand them as just well put together, you could see so many remnants of you inside of their clothes and everything. And if you had to describe one of your passions, what would it be? Is the singing your passion, or is fashion your passion, or both?
Oh, definitely it was fashion. It was fashion. Like I said, I was in a singing group in high school, but I never had these aspirations to be a singer past that time. During those times of like the late 60s, 70s, it was all about Motown, and every Black kid in the country had, at their school, they had talent shows and they were in groups. So it wasn't like a thing that was such a passion, but fashion has always been a passion of mine. My mom was a designer and seamstress. For me, I never really liked sewing, but I sewed because I grew up poor. And in order to have those fabulous clothes that I used to copy out of Vogue magazines, I had to learn how to sew.
That's amazing. You said that you grew up poor. Take us into your journey of how you progressed, and from the young Tina to the person that you are now.
I grew up really poor, the youngest of 7 kids, to parents that were from Louisiana who had very thick accents. And it was very embarrassing for me as a kid because, kids would make fun of the way they talked or whatever. So I had a lot of challenges. And the other challenge was that my mom sent us to a private school, which I never understood, because I'm like, if we're so poor, why are y'all paying for us to go to school? And my parents used to do all this work for the school. My dad used to drive the nuns. My brothers cleaned the schoolyard. My mom made all the altar clothes. And I was just like, why are they such slaves for the nuns? They treated us really bad. They would always tell me I didn't belong there. If you only knew. And, I'm like 5 years old. So come to find out later, and what I have to say is that I became a warrior at 5, because they used to always say they were going to break my spirit. And I would be saying to myself, no, you're not. And I would fight them, not fight physically, but like, I just wouldn't let them get the best of me and break my spirit. And my mom was really passive. She would never really, she was the sweetest, nicest lady, but she just didn't take up for me, my brothers. And so anyway, it treated me really bad. And I think that's when I learned to fight. Later, I found out that the reason why was because my parents were bartering. They were doing all this work so we could go to this private school. And they never told us, which I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, because we probably would have been embarrassed more than we were. But at least I would have understood why they picked on us all the time, especially me. And so, it's funny because I used to think of that as God. That really sucked as a child to have to deal with some adults and for them to tell me the negative things that they told me and send the negative messages. And whatever self-esteem issues I had, I think came from them. But I learned how to fight, and I learned how to be a warrior, and I've been a warrior ever since. Typically, I'm just a really easygoing, loving type person that just adopts everybody and loves everybody. But if you mess with my kids, I turn into a beast, as I'm sure you do too. And that came from having to stand up to them and fighting them. And my parents weren't the type of parents to say, oh, you can do anything. You can do anything you put your mind to. They were like, look, if you graduate from high school and you get a good job, that's like a government job or at the post office or something like that, you made it, and you get your family and you have kids and that's a happy life.
It's about them breaking those limitations for their children, because so many, we're told that, with the representation that we are, it's like, go get you a good city job. What happened if I don't want a city job?
That's right.
And the people that are successful, it's because they're parents. There are people like you that say, the sky's the limit. And if you want to go even higher than that, then you can. What did you sacrifice the most?
If I had to say anything that I sacrificed, it was a lot of leisurely time. And it's interesting that we're having this conversation because I was just talking to Solange about that. And I was saying to her, I don't ever remember taking a lot of time off, or I worked probably 7 days a week, because I was the hairstylist. At first, I was a hairstylist. I was the wardrobe person. And when I say wardrobe person, I'm not talking about a stylist like you probably had today to come and just style you. I'm talking about packing up the clothes, steaming them, doing everything. And, it's funny because one of the other parents, early days of Destiny's Child, we used to carry the luggage, because obviously when you start off, you're staying at the Holiday Inn or, the Ramada Inn, and we get in late and there's nobody to help with the luggage. So we would say, oh no, girls, you don't carry the luggage, we'll get it in. Because we wanted them to feel like, they were entertainers. And it's just so funny because we did everything and it was so much work. And I didn't have a lot of vacation time. So I think just leisurely time for myself, I sacrificed, many years of just making it about protecting, because I'm sure you can relate to this because that's what we're talking about. The girls started very young, like 12, 13. They went to Atlanta, and we always had a parent with them 24/7. They were never alone, never in the studio by themselves, never, because we were determined to protect them. So in my quest for wanting to protect them, and having another younger child that was 5 years, Beyonce and Solange are 5 years apart, I was working 7 days a week. And so that was the sacrifice that my years then are like a blur. I was like maybe 40, and that seemed old then, but that's very young to me now. But it's like a blur. I don't even remember a lot other than working. So that was probably the sacrifice.
Describe who you were before you were a mother and how motherhood changed you.
I was that kid that, I grew up on an island, believe it or not, in Texas, and I skated every day on the beach. I hung out on the beach. I just was a beach bum. And I really, up until 14, because I had bought into the fact that, okay, I'm gonna live in Galveston for the rest of my life. I'm gonna go and do, I mean, you know, I had these dreams about being a fashion designer or something to do with fashion, but my circumstances said, you'll probably be right here. And at 14, my brother's girlfriend came into my life. She drove up like a commercial in a red Miata convertible. She had an asymmetrical haircut. She was dressed to the nines. And I was like, oh my God, I just fell in love with her. And I followed her around and I just wanted to be like her. And she was the one that said, you got to get out of this town. Like, you are too talented. You can sew, you can design, you can do makeup, you can do hair, you know, get out of here, save your money and go to LA, go to New York, go somewhere and get a career. And that is the first time that seed was planted into my head. And, you know, I mentor kids now. My husband and I mentor 96 kids, Tina's Angels and Rich's Warriors. And they're South Central kids, you know, that don't have hardly any opportunities. And we have shown them, like taking them to museums, to plays, to Alvin Ailey. We took 10 kids to Africa last year. So that is why I mentor. And I get choked up because if that girl hadn't come into my life, I probably would be there with a bunch of kids in Galveston. So she took me to my first nice restaurant and she took me to see a play. And we went to see Alvin Ailey. And I saw all those fly Black people up there on the stage. I had never seen anything like that before. The people that were at the Alvin Ailey had on, they were dressed, they had nice cars. I was like, wow, Black people live like this? And it sounds crazy because I wasn't in a third back in the country, but I was in this little one-horse town where we had one Black doctor. How can you dream big if you never see it?
I started Beyonce in dance class because she was very shy. And she just was that shy kid that was just not only just shy, but just into her own world, not at all, not confident, just like, I don't really want to be bothered. So it was more of a social thing to get her in dance class. And her dance teacher, I call her stage mother, because she was the stage mother. She was like, oh my God, she can sing, she can dance, she's going to be a star. And I'm like, yeah, okay. You know, because most parents I talk to, they would think, oh, my kid is, you know, so special. And everybody thinks their kid is special. But for me, I was always a little more skeptical, you know, so she would say, oh, no, she can really sing. And my ex-husband and I, he was in the singing group too. So he played the piano. We used to sing when she was a little girl. And so I think that kind of instilled it in her. But he just thought, to me, that she was way more special. You know, he was a typical, she's really special. And I'm like, okay. And it's funny because Beyonce and I were talking and she said, Mama, remember the time I overheard you and my daddy talking and Stacy Lattimore? Do you know who that is? Because you're so young. Stacy Lattimore was this young girl, I think she was maybe 13, and she did Love on a Two-Way Street. She was on some show and I said to him, do you ever think that Beyonce will be able to sing like that? And he said, absolutely. She's going to sing better than that. So years later, after they're, you know, out there, she said, Mama, remember the time you and my daddy was talking and you said you didn't know if I would ever be as good as Stacy Lattimore? And I was like, yeah, you heard that? But it was always my thing, and maybe it was my upbringing, you know, from my mother saying all the time that you got to be realistic, that pie in the sky stuff, you know, it's like, so I don't know what that was, but we supported her 100%. Once she decided that that's what she wanted to do, and that was always her. She was always at 5 years old selling tickets and making people watch her dance and making people watch her sing. And, you know, nobody wanted to watch for very long. They used to perform at my hair salon. Nobody wanted to look. They'd be captive under the dryers and they couldn't go anywhere. So they'd be like, oh God, here comes Tina and kids. One thing is we just put 100% into it, when I didn't really think she was as serious till maybe around 7, she got in a talent show, and actually her dance teacher put her in the talent show, and it was all the parochial schools, all the Catholic schools competed. And And she got in that talent show. And when she sung, because she was shy, she just took over the audience and she just had all the stage presence and she got a standing ovation. And the prize was $100 and a trophy. And she came and sit back down and she said, I'm hungry. I just want to get my trophy and my $100 and leave. And I said, you don't even know if you won. But she did. Since she was 4, she went to a Michael Jackson concert and she said, I'm gonna be Michael Jackson. And I was like, okay, baby, that's so sweet. You know, even her looking at Whitney sing the national anthem, she was like, I'm gonna sing the national anthem one day. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. But she did, because it was in her. And the same with Solange. From like 4 years old, Solange was winning competitions, and she was, by 10, she was writing songs and going in the studio. Like, that's all they thought about. Kelly, all of them, they sung from morning till night. They danced, they made you watch them whether you wanted to or not.
How is it having your children be like where even people's favorite artists look to them like that's their celebrity? A lot of times when the children embark on a career like that, their walk becomes yours, right? So now you're thrown inside of the public eye, and now you have to deal with the celebrity of having a celebrity child and you yourself. How do you deal with that?
Well, you know, it's interesting because for so many years, I was so behind the scenes and I never wanted to come out. So I was really hiding. I was working so hard that my hair wouldn't be combed. So many pictures out there that were early on. And I remember this one picture that we were at the Golden Globes and Beyonce got she was there to present. And I was doing her, all of her stuff. And they were like, they want you on the red carpet. And I'm like, for what? I don't want to go on the red carpet. And they were like, no, they really want a picture of you and your husband and her. So I went out there and I had one mascara on one eye. It's the saddest picture ever. I had my hair natural curly, and so I used to blow it out and it would look nice, but I didn't have time. I look crazy, and I got this, and I look very sad because I know I don't look cute. And that's the picture that they showed all the time, of course. But I look back at that picture and I get so sad because it was a time in my life where I was just working all the time and I was hiding and I didn't want to be seen and I didn't want to ever do anything to embarrass my kids. So I was always just hiding. And it's funny because once I got the clothing line and I was on a HSN show where I sold my clothes, and I could go and do that with my eyes closed, but I still never thought of myself as being a celebrity. I'm just Tina.
Your cover with you and the red, it was so regal. When I say it was so regal, I'm talking about at work. I had this on my screensaver, like, this is goals. You know how you look at something and it just gives you chills? Like, it was so powerful.
Ebony came to me and they said, we want you to be like a sexy 60. And I'm like, oh, absolutely not. And I told them no. And the publicist came back to me and said, Tina, you really should do this. Like, women want to see that you can still be, you got a new boyfriend, you got a new town, you got a new life. And I said no. And then my husband said, who wasn't my husband then, he was like, Tina, you are going to do this. Like, stop hiding. And so that was a big deal for me. And let me tell you, I called my kids and I said, do y'all think I should do that? And they were like, we don't know. Because, it's funny about kids because I've been my whole life hiding from the camera and in the background, it was hard for them when I got on Instagram. They hated it. Like, I had to just say, listen, I got this, and I'm living again. So mind your business. And when I did the cover, I called them and asked them, can I do it? I mean, you think it'll be okay? And, of course, Solange was like, yeah, absolutely, Mom, you should do it. Beyonce was like, Mom, you know how private she is. She's like, I guess, it's fine if it's going to be really classy. And, I just don't want you to be looking thirsty. And I'm like, I'm not going to look thirsty. But and I did it. And it was one of the best, most liberating things that I did, because it was all about me and it wasn't about, being somebody's mom or being somebody's wife or being, just anybody's anything. It was just about Tina. So it was really like liberating for me.
And as I said before, representation is so important because you don't even understand how many women you inspire just with that. So I have to switch gears for a minute and ask you what I ask all of the parents. Give me some embarrassing nicknames you used to call your girls.
Oh, I used to call Beyonce Pumpkin. I mean, I called her Pumpkin until she was probably about 8. And I called Solange Bay. And that's so funny because now, and I have to clarify that because, you know, French Creole people say bebe. So I used to call her bebe, but she probably would kill me if I'm telling people that I called her bebe. You know, so I'm saying Bay, but and now Bay is like really cool, right? I mean, well, maybe that's probably over by now because I can't keep up.
So what secrets do you have for developing these legendary children? If you had to say, and I like to say them separately because they have successful careers separately. So what went into making Beyonce? Because no two children are alike. So what were just 3 ingredients that went into making the great Beyonce?
I think just work ethic, treating people the way you want to be treated. I mean, I think it had a lot to do with it because, you know, I think I see so many young people, and I'm sure you've seen it too, that get a little fame and they get a hit record or they get a movie and they just go crazy. Like they decide to be big divas and, you know, and not treat people kindly. And I think that has gone such a long way in both of my girls, all 3 of them, Kelly as well, to just really don't burn all these bridges and treat people bad. Look them in the eye, you know, treat people like human beings. And that's going to go a lot further than throwing temper tantrums and being divas. So they stay grounded. And I think that helps you because that is the one thing that I see that destroys celebrities more than anything is getting the big head.
With Solange, what is her ingredients?
I think it's the same thing because, you know, I just kind of use the same formula with Solange, but I think also what I told Solange all the time, and I still tell her now, is that she is totally an individual. You know, my 2 kids were very different in a lot of ways. And I think that celebrating who you are and walking to the beat of your own drum.
Great balance of divine feminine energy. And you can tell that they're unapologetically them on each level. And I know that comes from you. Like you said, let my baby do what she's going to do. Let her do what it is that she's going to do. What are you working on now? I know that there's so many things.
Well, the main thing, I just signed up for a podcast. And I'm really looking forward to it because I did this thing called Talks with Mama Tina during the elections to get people out to vote. And I just loved it. I love just talking to people like we're talking and sharing their stories with me. And I had everybody from Chloe and Halle to Michelle, Destiny's Child, and I had Stacey Abrams, and I did Black Love, and I was cheating a little bit, and I would always relay it back to voting, but I enjoy talking to people about their relationships and, you know, their experiences. So now I'm going to do that, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm Tina Knowles Lawson, and my children are Beyonce Knowles and Solange Knowles, and I